A true and faithful relation of what passed for many years between Dr. John Dee and his spirits. 1659. Meric Casaubon. Wednesday, the 19th of June, 1583, the Bulgar era. Hora to Meric. Dee said, I made a prayer to God, and there appeared one having two garments in his hands, who answered, a good praise, with a wavering mind. Dee said, God make my mind stable, and to be seasoned with the intellectual leaven, free of all sensible mutability. Edward Kelly said, of these two garments is pure white, the other is speckled of diverse colors. He layeth them down before him. He layeth also a speckled cap down before him at his feet. He hath no cap on his head. His hair is long and yellow, but his face cannot be seen. At the least, it was turned away ward from Edward Kelly continually through, though Edward Kelly changed his place. And he said, you shall see my face. Lo, it is white. Edward Kelly said, now he putteth on his pied coat and his pied cap, and he casteth the one side of his gown over his shoulder, and he danceth and saith, there is a God. Let us be merry. Edward Kelly said, he danceth still. And then he said, there's a heaven. Let us be merry. Doth this doctrine teach you to know God, or to be skillful in the heavens? Note it. Edward Kelly said, now he putteth off his clothes again, now he kneeleth down, and washeth his head, and his neck, and his face, and shaketh his clothes, and plucketh off the uttermost sole of his shoes, and falleth prostrate on the ground, and said, vouchsafe, O God, to take away the weariness of my body, and to cleanse the filthiness of this dust, that I may be apt for this pureness. Edward Kelly said, now he taketh the white garment, and putteth it on him. And he said, mighty is God in his great justice, and wonderful in his immense mercy. The heavens taste of his glory, the earth is confounded at his wisdom. In hell they tremble at him as if a revenger. This showeth thee, to be a God, and stretcheth forth thy glory from the east unto the west, for thy heavens are statutes, and thy creatures laws, that thou mayest be accounted a God of justice and glory, because thou art a God, therefore there is a heaven. For unto the Prince of righteousness there belongeth a place of glory, into the which there entereth none that are defiled, neither such as are blemished with the spots of iniquity. Manus hac bona est. Edward Kelly said, putting forth his right hand, hac autem mala. Edward Kelly says, putting forth his left hand, qui habet ares intelligat. Edward Kelly says, now he sitteth down on the desktop, and looketh toward me. He said, this parable is in general somewhat understood of us, but in particular, how may it be, or is it to be applied presently? We understand not. And he said, Beware lest error enter within this dwelling place of righteousness. I have said. Edward Kelly said, He seemeth now to be turned to a woman, and the very same which we call Galva. Now he is come down to the usual place on the table. D said, I have essayed diverse ways to place the 5 tables on the 2 sides of the first leaf. Is it to your liking? And, as I have done it, in the 5 little triangles? Galva says, As concerning the setting down of the 5 tables, it is sufficient as it is done. The cause why I appeared thus was that you might avoid error. D said, I pray you to show us the means how that error was or is to encumber us. Galva said, Whosoever taketh servants of the wicked to prove the glory of God is accursed. But, O Satan, how many are thy deceits? Note, my companion, Edward Kelly, would have caused personal aberrations of some of the reprobate spirits before the Prince Albert Laskie in my study, thereby to shew some experience of his skill in such doings, but I would not consent to it, and thereupon Galva gave judgment and warning of such an error of my companion and intention, and so on. Well, it says, so note my companion, it doesn't have the D symbol before that, but it has, it has AL, I thought he was correcting his, which companion? Galva replied, Behold, it is said, For he go from hence, I will pour water unto him, and my angel shall anoint him, as I have determined. Hide therefore nothing from him, for you belong unto him. Neither can flesh and blood work those things which I have glorified in him. All things that are established in God are glorified. I speak this for thy understanding. Neither let your hearts be hardened, for the earth is condemned, and these things shall come to pass. Credit is all that I seek, saith the Lord, for when I come, I shall be sufficiently believed. I take the God of heaven and earth to judge, and swear by him as a witness, that these words are true, and shall endure unto the end. The general points of man's salvation are concluded already, but the special gift belongeth unto God. God strengthens you against adversity. And D says, Amen. Now, one thing in general, it's best to, if you're not pressed, don't put oaths out there to start. You should be honest and everything else, and where people just take you at your word, and no one's urging you towards such things. Galva said, Should you, soon you shall know more. He said, This prince would gladly know whether it shall be best for him, with the first opportunity, to be going homeward. Galva said, It shall be answered soon, and what questions soever he also demandeth. He said, May he be here present at this action doing? Galva said, Those that are of this house are not to be denied the banquets therein. And he said, May I request you to cause some sensible apparition to appear unto him, to comfort him, and establish his mind more abundantly in the godly intent of his service? And there's an upside down F. Is it looking like that on your side. Galva said, "If you follow us, let him be governed by us, but whatsoever is of the flesh is not of us." Edward Kelly says, "She seemed to weepeth, for the water come forth of her eyes." He said, "You perceive how he understandeth of the Lord Treasurer, his grudge against him, and perhaps some other also, are of like malicious nature. What danger may follow thereof is encumbrance." Galva said, "The sum of his life is already appointed. One jot cannot be diminished, but he that is almighty can augment at his pleasure. Let him rejoice in poverty, be sorry for his enemies, and do the works of justice." Edward Kelly says, "She seemeth to put the air over her, and so to enter into a cloud of invisibility, and so disappear." And he said, "Deo gratias agamus." And so everybody's life can't be added to or diminished to. But this predestination is something that is because of preset laws of nature and stuff. God knows the consequences and all that. It doesn't mean that your own choices can't, result in such problems. And continuing with the contents, page 434, the Pope, Nuncius, his answer to Dr. D, grave and courteous, at the beginning of it, attire for, out for autumn to be corrected, page 435, a paper here inscribed and stilled, oraculum divinum, in Kelly's absence, written and delivered, as Dr. D doth here record, by spiritual and divine means, the drift whereof is to confirm Prince Rosenberg. At whole request, the sentence of banishment is mitigated. Page 436, a long and submissive letter of Francis Posius to Dr. D, and so on, where among other things he gives him a very punctual account of what had passed in discourse between the popes, Nuncius, and himself concerning their cause, apparitions, high attempts, and so on. Well worth the reading. His encounter with a Jesuit before the said Nuncio, what account Prince Rosenberg and some other great men made of them. Page 444, Kelly to Dr. D, Dr. D to his wife, but nothing considerable in either. Now, you don't have to repeat the prayers that they prayed to engage in this area of mythology. 136, page 444, 137, page 445, apparitions in the stone after 6 months intermission renewed, with expressions of great devotion to Dr. D, but with many woes and threatenings by the spirits, who nevertheless, Prince Rosenberg being present, promised spare to him, and give him some instructions how to carry himself. Francis Pucius, very troublesome, but at last quieted with the restitution. Dr. D at this time abounded with money, 2,000 ducats in one bag. Prince Rosenberg had a good purse of 800 florins, which the said Pucius had formerly contributed for the service. $138, page 448. Dr. D makes bold to propose some questions tending to the secret of the philosopher's stone, as I take it, but out of season it was rejected, and doth humbly submit. Now, I would say also this whole idea that you can buy masses and stuff like this is, even if the money goes to the church, it's like, yeah, that's really sort of taking that sort of thing too far. The contents of the second part 2, action 1, page 1, sermon-like stuff. Dr. D having a zeal, but not according to knowledge. Well, there's different sorts of knowledge. Marvelously affected with it. Prince Rosenberg, his expectation of money answered, and ended with great subtlety, by example out of Scripture, of Abraham, David, Solomon, and so on. The precious powder he had, how and when to be used, judgments to be executed upon several great ones. Sure enough, if they had prevailed by Prince Rosenberg as from God, Edward Kelly, his wife Baron, why he was very weary of his office, reproved for it, and another, Arthur, Dr. D's son, be substituted in his place, yea, and his portion of the precious powder to be taken from him, if he do not repent. 2, page 4. Arthur first presented and prepared by prayer, and so on, enters upon his office, seeth diverse things in the stone, lions, men, and so on, but heareth not. 3, page 5. Arthur again as before, 3 exercises in one day. 4, page 7. Arthur again as before, and 2 exercises more. 5, page 8. Edward Kelly in his office again, sees and hears as before. Uriel first, author of Dr. D's and Edward Kelly's conjunction, a new law promised here again, an abbastistical doctrine of committing adultery for God's sake, and so on. Of some words here, see the errata. And, yeah. You can't violate the law and have the spirit of the law. That's the clear point there. But Rasputin and Crowley and, they weren't the first people that went down this route. But usually people go down the route because they've, reasoned themselves away from keeping from it, 6, page 9. Here the spirits begin to show themselves in their own likeness, apparently, teaching doctrines of devils, and yet still, as their instruments at this day, diverse places. In the name of God, Dr. D and Edward Kelly are exhorted, you commended, to have their wives in common. The case argued on both sides stiffly and eagerly. Other strange doctrine of devils, noted and rejected in the preface. Of murder, condemned by the laws of men, approved by God. Well, not all killing is murder, so. St. Paul, impiously slandered? I don't know about what. It depends on what they say. The Bible's clear that there's some of the doctrines people say aren't quite, great promises in case of obedience. The powder, the Pope here accursed, yet popery elsewhere justified. Kelly scandalized. Dr. D is in great agony. Some secrets of distillation revealed by spirits. The powder again, and how Edward Kelly came by it. Predictions of England and so on, all false and foolish. Edward Kelly, his fidelity suspected. Now, if you're going to say that these are, well, some predictions, whether they're true or not, whether they come true or not, are false because they are made up or they're from the wrong, they involve something wrong to receive them. But and foolish again. This should be enumerated to say how these things have been proven wrong. But maybe it's so obvious you don't have to say anything further than read it, but we'll find out. Kabbalistical mysteries of letters and numbers, not well understood by Dr. D, and so on, and much helped by his spirits. But at last he hath joy in spirit, as he is persuaded. It looks like him. And resolves to obey. Dr. D. Edward Kelly and their 2 wives, their sense, apprehensions, and resolutions upon concerning this new doctrine of promiscuous copulation, enjoined, expressed in form of covenant. So by them called with God. Here first exhibited, and afterwards, page 20, completed and subscribed by the parties, with a most wicked cause, with most wicked, the letters, with the most wicked cause or conclusion, a dreadful imprecations to all that should hereafter come to the knowledge of it, or bring it to knowledge, whereas it is much to the glory of God and true religion that such mysteries of hell and darkness should come to light, to be abhorred by all men, and that others may be warned by such sad examples not to hunt after new doctrines and pretend inspirations and revelations. Well, isn't the whole point that this was that even not intending to share this with anything, it wasn't that they didn't get inspirations and revelations, it's what were they getting them from? Page 17, Edward Kelly, his declaration of his dislike from the beginning of these actions in general, his opposition upon this occasion, his dislike of this new doctrine in particular as contrary to the revealed will of God. Bow satisfied in some measure, and thereupon his readiness to obey, but upon the women's professed dislike, and demur resolves to give over all further dealing. 7, page 19, apparitions, the chief stone, carried away by spirits in their sight, more exhortations and arguments for compliance to this new doctrine, offer a miracle for further confirmation. 8, page 21, another apparition upon request made to confirm them in their purpose of obedience. 9, page 22, yet another to the same purpose, the covenant torn by Kelly, made whole again by spirits, the great power of God. Faith and obedience. The main thing, great promises, judgments pronounced against Kelly, his tearing the paper of covenant against others, some already executed, for enticing him away, by which it seems Kelly, being terrified, resolves to tarry and obey. The stone strangely taken away, strangely restored in the presence and sight of both. Now, you may think that when you sign pacts and whatnot that people do as part of their spiritual covenants, that all you have to do is just get rid of the paper or something, and you may want to keep the paper safe or from prying eyes and or whatever, but just because it's not there doesn't mean that the entities aren't, 10. The act of obedience, good words to be, countenance, greatest felonies, never wanted, is daily seen, performed, is accepted by shows and speeches. Commendation of wisdom, secrecy enjoined. 11. Kabbalistical doctrine of the creation of man, the soul of man not the subject of sanctification, and so on. Great promises and predictions, equally true, entertained with doctrine, with comfort. Page 28. Prince Rosenberg, the man now in favor, but miserably abused and deluded. 2 letters of his to Dr. D, and so on. Several questions by him proposed, as expecting great things, and wholly to be governed by their spirits. His confidence of a great treasure in the powder delivered unto him. Several questions and petitions of Dr. D upon the former propositions, and etc. is on page 30. It's to be offered unto God, among the rest, one for the making of the philosopher's stone, another for Kelly's being sick, for his wife being barren, for his own wife sick, and so on. Emperor Muscovy, his great opinion of Dr. D, and the favor offered, but here followeth the great hiatus, or interruption of the story, which bereaves us as many years spoken of in the preface account, all from hence to the end set out unto us, but the sad and lamentable catastrophe of this long delusion, Kelly is no more heard of now, yet the spirits appear still in the same shape as before, and we have 1607 Stylo Jewel. It's July, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, what else could it be in English? But yeah. Marti 20th. So March 20th. By this time, Dr. D was become a very old man, if he were sexagenarius, as he is stilled in Pocius his letters, page 1, 439, L, so 15, A, 1586 of the Common Era. He must needs be fourscore and upwards by this, but we need not take this word so preciously, however, if toward it then, more or less, he must be very old now, as I said before, and one of the things that we really should consider is that the cotton manuscript from which this book is rendered from, nowadays, the re-typesetting it, I don't think it should have been so expensive. I think it probably should have been half the price to be more available to people. But I understand the amount of work put into re-typesetting it and fixing out all the errors in the manuscript. Hopefully with translation, so you don't have. I mean, this is a good book. I recommend this book, but in general, when you're reprinting information like this, you should translate all the material. So the contents of the third part. Action 1, page 32, Raphael pretended, well, different, I mean, there are humans named Raphael and Michael and stuff like this, so, you know, just not the Raphael that people are going to think, oh, it's Archangel Raphael. No. Anyways, unto Dr. D to comfort him, being, besides old age, much afflicted with poverty and sickness. 2, page 33, the same Raphael of a certain treasure somewhere underground, as was supposed, Dr. D's questions rather eluded than really answered, put off, and promises of wonderful wisdom, and so on still. 3, also page 33, a voice sent to Dr. D, then, as it seemeth alone. 4, page 34, Raphael again, who, with many fair pretenses and very forcible rhetoric, to such a one as Dr. D, doth deliver the message unto him of a journey into a far country, to be undertaken by him in this his miserable case and condition, up purse and body, through the years, in present sickness. Now, we're talking physically, but the far country, Eckankar is not the only one that calls that the spiritual realms. So, could there have been a hidden message in that thing? Is that the psychic and spiritual detached journey, as you could say? The danger of his disobedience herein, and reward of obedience, the philosopher's stone, and so on. D is willing, oh rare faith, are rather prodigious, but deserved infatuation. Salisbury and his devils, if the devil may be believed, page 36, some cases and questions proposed, and to be proposed. It seems Dr. D at this time took upon him to be a cunning man. His necessity, which was great, might put him to it to try all means, but I think he was too honest to thrive by it. And we will get into the rest of this and the statements connected to some of this. But yeah, I plan to, everything in the Enochian itself, if I haven't written it out and planned it, it's definitely work in the future. This Enochian stuff is sort of a lifelong practice, but you know, you don't have to worship the spirits, and you don't have to worship the angels, you don't have to worship